Dawntrail marks the beginning of a new era for Final Fantasy XIV, but does its story live up to expectations? Let's take a look, but before we begin, hey, I'm Fornax, welcome to my channel. Do pull up a chair and make yourself at home, and if you find anything herein of merit, please feel free to press my buttons below. And, of course, needless to say, yet I will say it anyway, there will be numerous spoilers ahead, not just for Dawntrail's MSQ, but for the whole narrative of 14, so you have been duly warned. 14, after Dawntrail, was the story of our awakening. It was a true hero's journey, from our fresh-faced beginnings to being accepted as a trusted scion. It's the account of our maturing into a battle-hardened veteran and war-weary bulwark of Etheros. It was a fairly traditional story, in truth, with an Aesop's fable ethos without being heavy-handed in its lessons. I know I'm a better person for playing Final Fantasy XIV, and I cannot say that about any other game I've experienced. This decades-long story arc has blessed us with complex antagonists, flawed allies, and at no point did I ever really feel talked down to, nor did it shy away from hard political or ethical questions. Under the writer's sharp-tipped quill, we've weighed the divine right of kings and the ethics of democracy, the dehumanization of the othered and the suffering of the oppressed and their oppressors. In truth, we have examined the breadth and depth of humanity's capacity for both good and evil. So when I say Dawntrail had a mountain to climb before its first word was even penned, I just cannot overstate the Herculean task it faced. And that is despite of Endwalker's somewhat, shall we say, uneven story delivery. So, did Dawntrail manage to hold its own against the glorious symphony of destruction and rebirth which preceded it? Well, it's complicated. We have until now been the axis around which the narrative has spun. In fact, never have I felt more the main character in an MMO, which is no mean feat. Dawntrail, however, is Lamaty'i's hero's journey, and we take up the role of mentor and friend. This shift in tone and focus is accompanied in the game's opening chapter, its prologue, with a jarring lack of agency and action, not the rip-roaring roller coaster I was hoping for. Couple that with some truly odd musical choices in Tuliolal left me feeling rather nonplussed as we headed out to undertake Lamaty'i's version of the Labours of Heracles. Going into Dawntrail, I was unconvinced by Lamaty'i. She seemed to be a well-intentioned youth, taking on a role which was far beyond her, which of course was the writer's aim, it was her intention. Her growth and education is the lion's share of the early game. In fact, all vying for the crown are equally unfit in unique ways. This displayed well by how they tackle each of the trials of the quests. All good and well in theory, however in practice the game is too obvious in its delivery. Never did I feel more talked down to, which is sad, with its ethic lessons feeling very heavy-handed and clumsy. Lamaty'i, however, did begin to grow on me, inch by inch. I was won over by her compassion and determination, even if her boundless, bluff and bluster was rather taxing. The character of the Dawn Servant too endeared himself to me. He saw the flaws in his beloved children and hoped the trials created by his wiser aspect would temper them. By the time we reached the Azure Forest, I had drawn the conclusion, much like the Dawn Servant, that two heads are better than one, and barring some narrative sideswipe, I would see his two adopted children bearing the weight of the crown together. Corner being a surprise hit for me. From distant and cold to selfless and dutiful, his small narrative arc complemented Lamaty'i's well. The redemption of Bakul Jaja and the tragic nature of his circumstance was a compelling note in our tale too, unlike the fall of the deeply disagreeable Zoralja. His entitled, selfish arrogance was repellent for sure, not a bad start for a bad guy, but sadly his story rung with but one note. You see, where the source of Bakul Jar Jar's failings was explored by the writers, Zor-El's was not. I find it unlikely that his sire would have instilled in him such repugnant values. The story seemed to indicate that sibling rivalry and parental envy were the wellspring of his ire, that such seemingly shallow grievances gave rise to such genocidal intent, at least to me, was never justified by the writing, by his story. Zor-El's oversized role in the final chapters of Dawntrail just compounded this error, impacting the tale greatly. How can a thinking being not be changed by some 30 years? It doesn't make any sense. To me, he is just a badly written character, but perhaps I'm missing some cultural context, so please do let me know below. The closing chapter of Dawntrail revolves around the adjoined realm of Alexandria and its ruler. This, for me, was the most interesting part of the story. It was like a Black Mirror episode spliced into a Disney princess movie. The premise of Alexandria laid at our feet complex ethical and social questions. What is the nature of consciousness and the consequence of a mind without a soul? It touched on topics of bodily autonomy and privacy, seeking to explore the repercussions on a people robbed of grief. Raising the question, would you give up those you love for immortality, which is really what's happening? When death is immutable, how does that shape culture? The story even strayed into the ethical minefield of commerce, when the currency is life itself. I would imagine a far more dystopian society being born from such oddities. The world the writers created, however, was mundane and awful enough to be believable. The most potent threat, however, came from artificial intelligence, made manifest in Sphene. She is the living embodiment of the paperclip problem. The idea being, if you task a machine to make paperclips, but you don't sufficiently bound the AI ethically, the machine's drive to create paperclips would consume all resources and extinct all life on the planet, and then the solar system, and so on and so forth. For me, the first time I saw Sphene, I just knew she would wind up being the real big bad of Dawntrail. Small, cute, sweet girl ends the universe is a well-trodden trope in Japanese anime and manga, and of course, Endwalker. And I have to say, I had that same feeling when I first met Midian. And don't even get me started on Fan Daniel, another sad boy with a grievance and a galactic-sized ego to match. And in all honesty, he too suffered from the lack of character development we see again in Zor-El's. And then came the Endless, the paperclip to Sphene's apocalypse. I've not felt so uncomfortable playing through a story since the raising of Teldrassil. The moral morass I was forced into was honestly excruciating. Now, if you believe the Endless are nothing more than complex algorithms, all good and well, no harm done. Personally, I'm not sure where the line of sentience lays, both in Final Fantasy XIV and reality. Therefore, our pleasant sightseeing tour getting to know the locals was marked by horrific moments of mass murder for me. To my mind, we could well be committing the very crime we were trying to prevent. And the plight of the Endless too was just awful. No choice in their existence, subjected to a system blind to their real needs and desires. In all that misery, however, I did enjoy the deepening of Kryl and Erenville's stories. Their threads throughout Dawntrail were enjoyable if bittersweet. Offing their respective parents, however, not so much. It was quite frustrating because to me, there seemed an obvious solution to the problem of the Endless, even if we still had to end Sphene, and that is Otis. By placing the minds, the living memory of the Endless into the countless robots Alexandria seems able to produce, we could have created a stopgap, a safety valve to circumvent the need for violence on both sides. Now, of course, this is not a perfect solution, but it would at least have given some agency back to the Endless themselves, whilst allowing them to have a life beyond the tragedies that claimed them. Maybe this kind of thread will be revisited in later patches. There has to be some reason that we met both versions of Otis, I think, but In the end, the hero of our tale, Lamat, saved the day. And we, the player character, we had come full circle, planning our next adventure. Before I render my conclusion, there are some Square Enix shenanigans which I feel compelled to call out in real hope that 14's next expansion will right these wrongs. So, for all that is good on Atheros, voice the whole MSQ. Its absence is jarring and immersion shattering. It doesn't break immersion, it smashes it with a hammer. And it's just bad for business. People will engage with the story if there is voice acting. They will not if it is not, and it is just a bizarre silent movie marked by footfalls. It is strange. Honestly, most of the narrative tone, its vibrance, and any chance of humour is lost because of this. 14 is wildly successful financially, so there is no excuse why the entirety of the MSQ cannot be voiced. And even if I had to play the whole expansion in Japanese with subtitles, please, for the love of gaming, at least voice the game in its native language. The narrative deserves it, the player base deserves it, and really, Enix, you are making this extraordinary game with a focus on narrative. If you want this to be a legacy title, the game deserves it itself. And the next Unforgivable Sin, one NPC model per race is a problem. If Square Enix was an indie developer, I could forgive the complete lack of NPC model diversity. They are, however, a juggernaut, and therefore must go to the naughty corner immediately and remain there until this jarring, again, immersion-shattering oversight is corrected. Even the humanoid characters look like they're all wearing a uniform. So much for Tuliola's cultural diversity, makes a mockery of the narrative. And side note, the mouth rigging for many NPCs, especially the giants, is just awful, and I do not understand why. Is there some lack of resources with 14 specifically that I'm unaware of? Please do let me know below, because this is their flagship. I don't understand what's happening. The question is, did I enjoy playing Dawntrail? And the answer is yes. It held my attention, it expanded my understanding of the world, and that of many companion NPCs who I actually care about. It also spawned many conversations about the topics and ideas examined by the writers herein, so that was great. And it also allowed us to explore many beautiful environments and dungeons. It was great for that. Do I think the MSQ of Dawntrail holds its own against expansions like Heavensward or Shadowbringers? No. It doesn't have the high fantasy and maturity of Heavensward, nor the deep lore and character development of Shadowbringers. All that said, however, and as flawed as it is, in comparison to the narratives of other MMOs, Dawntrail still shines. And in my opinion, it is well worth the price of admission. Do let me know your thoughts below. Agree, disagree, if I missed some nuance, what were the high points for you, what were the low points for you? And obviously this is just a story review. I haven't even touched on purely the gaming aspect of Dawntrail, and if you would like me to make that video, let me know below. Whilst you're down there telling me why I'm wrong on many topics, and I probably am, please do show some love to my wondrous supporters over on Patreon and Subscribestar who keep this one-woman show up running and more or less sane. Same adjacent, shall we say. It's good enough for me. They keep things going when my health makes my content schedule just non-existent at times. Goodness me, I don't deserve them. But we have come to the end, so thank you so much for watching my channel. Thank you so much for supporting. Thank you for liking and subscribing. I hope that you have pushed my buttons below. And until next time, please stay safe, stay awesome, and thank you so much for watching.